Answering the question has expired. Senator Milne.
Thank you, Mr President. My question is to the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Abetz. And I ask, given that the government has agreed to introduce and pass regulations and penalties developed by the Palmer United Party regarding the clean energy legislation repeal bill, and given that it affects entities, everything from individuals through to body corporates, through to unincorporated associations and trusts, will the government explain whether this includes Qantas and supermarkets, for example, or is it restricted to only electricity and gas suppliers?
The Leader of the Government in the Senate and the Minister representing the Prime Minister, Senator Abetz.
Thank you, Mr President. There are a number of aspects to the honourable Senator's question. If I can start off with the latter part first. In relation to issues Qantas and I understand Coles and some other corporations about potentially not passing on full price savings to households, we have asked that the ACCC look into those allegations to ensure that that occur. Now, in relation to the Palmer United amendments, Mr President, they will provide, as I described I think earlier in the debate, we provided a belt as security, and they then provided braces to add even further security to ensure that the consumer would be protected and have the price reductions that flow from the carbon tax passed on to consumers. But it really is, Mr President, a bit rich. Somebody claiming they are concerned to have costs passed
Pause
on
the clock.
when they are—
Minister. Senator Milne, point of order.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. My point of order is relevance. It's a specific question and it affects business across the country, and they deserve a straight answer.
Senator Milne, I wrote down part of your question. It said, will the government explain, or will the minister explain on behalf of the government? And you raised a number of issues, and the minister has been relevant to this point. Minister, you have the call.
Thank you, Mr President. It is all very well, and we would join Senator Milne in wanting to ensure that the abolition of the carbon tax is passed on to absolutely everybody. But there's only one problem. Senator Milne wants this $11 million a day impost to remain on those consumers, on those businesses, on those voluntary organisations and everybody else in the community, knowing full well that this tax is having a huge impost on the cost of living of every Australian, is destroying jobs and, worst of all, is doing absolutely nothing for the benefit of the environment.
Senator Milne, supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr President. So I ask the minister again specifically because business across the country want to know the answer. Your legislation was just to the regulator. What this does is bring in penalties that applies to all the entities. So is this applying to only electricity and gas suppliers, or is it applying across the economy, including to aviation and supermarkets? Minister.
Thank you, Mr President. Look, I can go through the detail of the Palmer amendment, part of which is to insert 2 new divisions into the new Part 5 of the Competition and Consumer Act 2010 called Divisions 2B and 2C, which impose general obligations on electricity and natural gas retailers to provide information to the ACCC and customers on the cost savings that have been or will be passed through to consumers. Retailers of electricity and gas would need to do 2 things. Firstly, they will need to give a carbon tax removal substantiation statement to the ACCC, and they will also need to inform customers by the 31st of December 2014 of the average estimated cost saving for 2014-15 resulting from the repeal of the carbon tax that have been or will be passed on through to the consumer.
Further supplementary, Senator Milne.
Yes, thank you, Mr President. Can the minister explain how today's support of yellow tape sits with the government's determination to tackle the avalanche of red and green tape so abhorrent to the Prime Minister?
Minister.
Mr President, there was a very good first speech given yesterday by the Liberal Democrat senator, and he talked about 2 steps forward and 1 step back. and any suggestion that the Palmer United Party amendments can be described as yellow tape just falls into absolute and utter insignificance to the removal of the huge amount of green tape that will be removed when the carbon tax finally goes. And we, on behalf of the Australian people, want to see that outcome, and I understand Palmer United also want to see that outcome, along with other crossbench senators in this place, because they know of the huge impost that this green tape of the carbon tax has had on their cost of living, $550 per household per annum, destroying jobs and, worst of all, doing absolutely nothing